absolutely on the level of ridiculousness. So this is all great for a video game, but if your animal falls in the water, you are jammed. I do not know who thinks that shooting a bow underwater is a good idea. Physically impossible. He's getting some wood and he's got himself some primitive weapons. Probably going to be building a base camp here. That's what I'm imagining he's hauling that wood for. It takes a lot of energy to throw a log over your shoulder and easy to trip over some tree roots. Got to be careful. He's got himself an axe made out of rock and some sticks. It looks like is this guy building a trap? I'm trying to see what he's actually doing here. Could be building some type of trap to acquire food. Walking through the underfloor there, just gotta be careful where you're stepping. Could be poison snakes. I imagine there's plenty of poison snakes out there. And for myself, I'd be looking for the poison ivy. Is this guy setting a trap? Looks like it. I'm not familiar with this style of trap he's using. I've made several types of primitive traps myself. I've used for, of all things, hunting rats in Chicago. I've made deadfalls, other types of primitive trap. Always love that kind of thing where you can take raw material from whatever's around you, whether it's in the forest or in an alley, and try to make something to get your game. So this guy's gonna walk with a log on his shoulder across another log on a river. That's a good way to fall. He's acquiring some stuff out of his backpack. He's got some bones, some arrows. What he's gonna make with this. There's a lot of things you can make with animal bones. You can make tools and weapons. You can grind up animal bones for a little get-me-by treat if you have to. Yeah, he's got quite a nice little setup for his home base here, his camp. So he must have been making a trap earlier. But he's building a little backrest there. He's got his fire pit. A couple of the most important survival skills for me that I would think is that, and I've heard this from other people who've survived and also done these different shows, is creativity, thinking outside the box, being able to see objects and know what you can use them for. A lot of times people are in situations where it was life or death and they literally had all the supplies around them. They just didn't know what to do with them. And so a lot of times it's being creative and thinking how you can use these objects. Of course, there's also just the not panicking. The mental game in survival is knowing to keep calm and then knowing what your resources are around you, that different types of plants and stones that you can use to acquire and make tools to get food and shelter. For me personally, like what this person's doing is they're using everything that's available to them and around them to make a good shelter. It's a very large shelter for one person, but if it works, then that's great. In my opinion, about 90% just using your brain. So like the more you are wasting energy on certain projects, you're using up food sources, you're using up energy in your own body. So everything you do has to be replenished. So every task you do, you're going to need to eat. And we're so used to today, like, oh, if I'm hungry, I just walk on down to the store or the fast food restaurant, and you don't have that availability in the wild. So you have to really think about how you're expending your energy. So a lot of these projects that people get involved in are really cool, they're exciting, but you have to think about the more complex it is, the more energy you're expending and taking away fat reserves and different types of energy, water that could be used for other tasks. So this guy's starting fire with friction. I have not seen that type. I've started fire with bow drill, with flint and steel, course, with a match. And I'm so old, I've even started one with a car lighter one time. Now, that's really old. Learning what you have available, learning how to look at your environment and know what you need to do to successfully survive. Of course, if you're living in a jungle area, you're going to have to be familiar with what types of plants are edible, which types of plants are poisonous. I talked to a guy years ago who grew up in South America, and he would make bows and bowstrings out of a certain type of tree that he knew how to identify. And if I was in the woods in that area, I wouldn't know which one it was because I didn't grow up in South America. Number one mistake that I've seen is people hyper-focusing on a certain task and not being aware of how much energy they're expending. Any task has to have more of a reward than what you expend. So a lot of people will get really involved in either making a boat, a certain type of trap, or a shelter, and they get so driven that they lose focus that they need to acquire food, clean water, and eventually your body will just shut down. And by that time, if you haven't had ample food supplies, you're going to pay the piper. Obviously, any type of game where you get a chance to problem solve, that's, again, I should probably rephrase that earlier question as the term problem solving, looking at if you need a shelter, how's the best way to build a shelter? If you need food, what's the best way? So yeah, you're having tasks put in front of you that you're going to have to think outside the box how to get these objects, get these needed resources to go and survive. So yeah, I would say it's a starter. Unfortunately, a lot of these games, even though they're starting and they're good, the reality of thinking about bugs eating on you the entire time while you're trying to do these tasks, the threat of maybe another predator, inclement weather, these are all issues that somebody who's in a survival thing, it's a constant pressure on you. He's chasing what looks like is that a raccoon? Yeah, he's got a raccoon, a hunted mini raccoon, not with a stone hammer. It would probably work. They're tough little critters, and that raccoon would not go down to that easy, but hey, it's a video game. I'd want more than just a stone hammer. Now he's got his bow, and I've made and hunted many animals with primitive bows that I've made. Distance, that's a little bit far for that kind of shot, and shooting an animal that goes into the water. This is all great for a video game, but if your animal falls in the water, you are jammed. First of all, processing a deer underwater, not sure it's the greatest idea. This is kind of funny to see somebody processing a deer underwater. Yeah, you definitely have to be a lot closer to these animals than what this is depicting. I've hunted with fish with my bow too, done a lot of bow fishing. So yeah, it's archery is a great skill to learn, and making your own bows and arrows is even more fun. It's very challenging. It's very rewarding when you actually get that animal and you have taken it down with something you made yourself. The reward level back is just amazing. This video game makes it a little easy enough that you're not expending energy, but when you actually process a large deer like that, you are exhausted. I'm not sure if they're showing everything they've done with this animal once they've processed it, but using the hide for many things, whether it's clothing or shelter or bags or moccasins. You can use the antlers for tools and weapons. Now he's shooting a bow underwater. And he's got a bear swimming. This is absolutely on the level of ridiculousness. You would never want your bow to go into the water. Wood don't get along. It would really be detrimental to the bow's longevity. And the fact that he's now shot this bear in the water and processed it underwater, I'm thinking Aquaman has got to up his game here, because this is seriously Aquaman level hunting and underwater processing. I'm gonna have to try that out sometime. I guess I'm missing out on my hunting. This guy loves to swim in the water a lot and with his equipment. And again, that's not ideal to be sopping wet. Most deer aren't going to come after you once you've shot them, unless you cornered them. There's very few people who will hunt bear with a primitive bow, and there are people who do it, but you either got to be insane or got some big kahunas, because that bear is not going to die as fast as they show in the video game. When you're shooting an animal with a bow, it is dying of blood loss, and that takes a while, especially the larger animals. And if that animal decides to, like a bear or a wild boar or any other type of a predator animal like that, they will come in and tear your head off. This bear would take a ton of abuse before he would actually go down. It's great for video games, but in real life, I would not suggest you go hunting for bear in water. It's a snake. I've eaten snake too. A water moccasin. Tastes like chicken. When you're hunting like this, you have to decide if the prospect of the food you're going to get is worth you getting killed for. So if somebody asked me if I was willing to go after a deer versus a grizzly bear versus a poisonous snake, I'd pick the deer. Now, poisonous snake like this, as long as you keep your distance and you make sure they're dead and cut their head off, then yeah, that you're gonna have a meal out of that meat. It's gonna stink like crazy, because most snakes like that really give off bad smells. In a pinch, if I was hungry enough, I would eat it with joy. But yeah, in survival situations, you always want to make sure the risk is worth the reward. Now he's going after sharks with a wooden stick, and I'm gonna be honest with you, sharks creep the crap out of me, so I'd hightail it to the water and leave that shark be. Not a big fan of sharks. He's going after this hammerhead shark with a stick, and I would probably want to have a 50 caliber Barrett or something larger if I were going to go after a shark. I'd just leave him be, go after some smaller fish, but it's fun for a video game. Well, I mean, there's two types of hunting. There's active and there's passive. So like active hunting would be like spears, bows and arrows, any type of projectile. I mean, if you're talking primitive level stuff, and then you of course obviously get into guns are more optimal because you have more force and power. And then there's passive. There's traps. You can use like nets, gill nets for fish. You can use deadfalls and all different types of traps on land for different types of small game. You know, mice, voles, different types of small game animals that you catch enough and makes a decent meal. And there are plenty. You get rabbits with snares. The one thing with survival is the people who have the most experience or the most options in their arsenal, whether it's passive or aggressive style of hunting tools, they're going to have the more food sources. So a person who goes out and spends all day long hunting, if they're unsuccessful, if they've set up a bunch of traps, they're probably going to have the opportunity and the options to have more food that way. But then if they didn't. And vice versa, the person who just sets up traps but just sits in camp and does nothing isn't going to have as much food available. Because the problem with traps is once you catch an animal in a trap, other animals get wise to that. And so fox, coyotes, badgers, they'll come along and they'll get your trapped animal. And you just helped them out, made their job a lot easier. So you have to get to that food source before they do. And this guy's doing a lot of underwater spearing, which I have never done, don't plan on doing ever. I feel pretty vulnerable underwater. So I've been invited on several of these types of hunts down in Puerto Rico and have yet to take my buddies up on it. Here's the Jaws sequence. Yeah, he's got the pointy stick. I would be opting for a 12 gauge shotgun, something more, a little bit more firepower. He's got himself a barrel. He's improvised here. It looks like he's made some type of hook out of something that was laying around, which that's another great skill, is just improvisation, learning how to use what you have available. Nature isn't going to just hand you everything you got. It's there. You just have to figure out how to put it together. Now he's made another hook out of a crowbar, and it looks like some type of plumbing device. He's got a pig coming in, wild boar. And you see those tusks on the side of that critter, and he's got his bow out. Shooting a pig in the head like that is really, their skull is very thick, very bony. You should probably make a shot between either the neck and the shoulder, or right behind the shoulder where the heart and lungs are, because you're going to go through a lot of arrows. Oh, he finally did take down the boar. I've got a pig skull in my apartment right now, my first wild boar I killed. So yeah, this is going to make a lot of good meat. Get some pork chops and some bacon. I do not know who thinks that shooting a bow underwater is a good idea. Physically impossible as far as the actual resistance the water will have on the limbs. It just won't have the power. A lot of times you see these certain types of underwater, what do they call them, spearfishing devices, and they don't have limbs. They just use big rubber bands because there's not as much resistance. You've got what looks like Nemo there, a pufferfish Nemo that gonna have for dinner. And that's another thing, too, about certain situations. You have to make sure you're eating something that's not poisonous. A lot of these fish have certain types of toxins in them, or stingers. This guy looks like he is. I don't know if I'd really want to eat a fish looking like that. But if, again, I was hungry enough, you're going to do whatever you can do. He's got a fishing pole. Learning how to even fish is a skill that a lot of people don't know how to do. I've been fishing all my adult life and taught a lot of people how to fish. This guy's pointing his stick right in the shark's head again with the hammer. But again, I think that one of the things is that these are all good in the sense of fun for video games and entertainment. And to me, I would always encourage people, if you hopefully it inspires you to learn a skill, whether it's something as simple as fishing or how to make bows and arrows. It's a lot of fun. It's always interesting to me to learn new skill sets. And so whether it's trapping or anything I'm doing there, it's always a challenge. And if a video game inspires you to go out and do that, man, more power to it. If you like these videos, check out Gameology on Facebook and YouTube. If you want to see more of me, Tim Spike Davis, you can check me out on Facebook, Instagram, or Tim Spike Davis 5 on TikTok. Hope you guys will join me for the next video.